Hi, everybody. We didn't get to it in the faculty meeting, but we can get to it here. I'm going to actually share my slides with you right now. I've been making video after video, so I don't want to be redundant, but I do want to talk about some of the data here and a few things we can do to address some of the things I have been noticing. If you access the slide presentation, you can see the original video where I go into detail about the oral reading fluency screener I administered to certain students through September and October. That's the data update that I planned on giving you. And I want to talk about sentence frames. We've already talked about Read a Book Month, so I just want to talk about 1 and 2. Let me just make the case for listening to students read in class. When students read aloud, either one-on-one to you individually in conference or in small group or whole group settings, you can learn a lot about that student's strategies for reading comprehension and for decoding certain words. I can also find out more about what I may need to reinforce in class. I tested 63 students. Those 63 students tested below the 35th percentile on the reading comprehension FastBridge assessment that we administered in early September. I wanted to listen to these students read because when you listen to a student read, you can tell a lot about comprehension, like I just said, and decoding. So of those 63 ninth graders that I tested, 43% tested at high risk for fluency problems. That means they were reading well below the ninth grade benchmark for words correct per minute. The ninth grade benchmark for words correct per minute for the fall is 177 words correct per minute. And that's not blah, 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 blah. That's smooth, fluid, flexible, emotive reading. 43% of the students that I tested were well below that 177 words correct per minute benchmark. So this is not anything new to you. I'm not telling you this and thinking you're surprised by this data, by the direness of the fluency and comprehension problems that we may be seeing in our classrooms. So here is one possible solution for how to address it. By listening to a student read aloud, I can hear the mistakes they're making, and I can address those mistakes in assignments that I give them where they're working with words that have those patterns over and over. I got into detail in this in another video, so I really don't want to go into it again, but I heard problems in words like shrewdly, and I heard problems with words like varieties. And what I'd like to do is address those problems. And the way we can do that is by having the students use those words now, not just at the word isolated level, which doesn't make sense too much, but to use them now at a sentence level. Hence, sentence frames. Sentence frames can be used in a fading way, where we start out perhaps a little bit over scaffolded and then back way off with the way we structure these frames. So if a student is presented with data such as the graph here, and then I give them a sentence frame like as such, based on this data, I noticed that blank, blank, blank. I can shape the student's thinking, at least at the outset, maybe a bit heavy-handedly, and shape and guide their level of inquiry. Based on this data, I noticed that blah, blah, blah. This makes me think that, et cetera, et cetera. I don't over scaffold, but I give just enough to guide the students in how to look at data. This is one possible sentence frame. Notice the one in yellow over here. Based on this graph of the data, I notice that, and it makes me think that, etc. So again, this is practice for organization. Here's Wesley's reaction to the data using the frames. My voice is super loud in this, so I don't want to. Here, let's see if I can turn it down a little. All right.
What do you notice, and what does it make you think?
Based on this data, I think that most of ninth grade needs some more practice or needs to go over more things in their English class to get better at testing. But this green is pretty big for low risk. So I think there's in this blue is still 15%. So I think there's still a high percentage of people that know what they're doing.
What is the goal of reading, Wesley?
The goal of reading.
Yeah.
To comprehend it and get some sort of meaning out of it.
Yes.
So there's for an initial response to the data, I think that's there's some pretty strong stuff there. There's a few things that need some correcting, but I like that the student was able to generate their own verbs such as practice, comprehend, using terminology such as make meaning. The frames allow the student to be more spontaneous in other areas. Here are some more frames, some more thoughts on sentences as we move into the second quarter and start moving towards sentences and syntax. So if a sentence is a set of words that expresses a complete thought, then sentence frames, sentence stems, sentence starters, there's many different terms for this, are a student's scaffolding that will allow them entree into your discourse, into the discourse of your discipline. In the faculty meeting, we were talking about high achieving CTE based school that uses that had a performance task related to customer service in a bilingual setting. Well, if we're going to be going towards things like that, then we must become astute at sentence level communication. Our students must be proficient in that. So this is an ideal way to practice exactly that, talking about and in many ways defending your practice. Parallel lines have slopes that are et cetera, but perpendicular lines have. Because Ishmael Bea was a child soldier, he blank. Slightly more complex sentence structure here. Although the colonists settled near rivers. Notice how these bolded words guide you. They shape us towards certain patterns of reasoning. But because and although are very, very potent signal words, pointing them out in writing can help a student use those effectively to guide thinking. One fun way to get the words and the syntax and the sentences in students' heads and in their mouths is through a Jeopardy game. In science last week, we played such a Jeopardy game about nitrogen and more. Students enjoyed it. Because there is that element of surprise. You don't know what's behind that blue box. There is an element of competition, elements of choice, mystery. We love all those things. Here's one sample question. Why is releasing increasing amounts of carbon into the atmosphere a poor idea? And then the directive answer using this frame. Releasing increased carbon into the atmosphere is a poor idea because. So the initial entree into the sentence is taken care of for the student, at least here in this question. But then The actual content is left to the student. There is a link to the game itself if you're interested in playing this Jeopardy game or seeing the Jeopardy creator, where you can make your own games of this sort. There's also a Jamboard connected to this slideshow. On the Jamboard, you'll see some sample sentence frames for all kinds of disciplines, more generic ones, algebraic ones, culinary, prediction-based ones that may be generic or can work cross-disciplinarily. And then I put this one here in pink, because it's a special kind of sentence structure that in science of reading and with my other reading specialist peers, we agree that appositives are a good apex sentence structure for our students from where we're at right now. What I mean by that is it would be a good goal for our students to be really good at writing appositives. So an appositive is a second noun or a noun phrase or clause that's placed beside another noun to explain it more fully. And here I'm just reading off my sticky note here. George Washington, blank, notice the commas, was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. What could you put in there about George Washington that would complement that sentence? So appositives are a good goal. Why? Because they let you as the supervisor check for comprehension. Because if a student can write an effective appositive sentence, that indicates that they know more than just one or two things about the subject. And they also give more room to add complexity. George Washington, a Virginia planter, was or a Virginian planter, was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. That sentence just got a little more complex, right? You can use any of these. You can also add your own. If you're not familiar with Jamboard, if you go on over to this side menu here and you click on the sticky note, you can actually add your own, right? Pull it around like a sticky note, make it bigger. If you click around here, you can see that there are blank pages that you can add other sticky notes to. These are Jamboards. Some of you may already be familiar, some of you may not, right? We could share potential sentence frames here, right? Not potential sentence frames, sentence frames. And then we're back where we started with Read a Book Month, which begins with the morning announcements tomorrow. If you have a book you're reading, can you list it here? And just a challenge to you is, could you start a book with your students this month? The rest you can explore on your own. I hope this was helpful to you. If you need help, though, writing sentence frames or finding out other ways that you can use them in your instruction, let me know and I'll try to help. But just to reiterate, sentence frames are a no-nonsense entree into the language of your subject, the subject you are sharing with your students. If we can get students using the language of school, using the language of our discipline in their mouths, it's going to become more ingrained in their practice. Okay? All right. I hope you enjoyed this talk. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.